My whole life, I've enjoyed listening to vinyl. Something about dropping a stylus into some grooves has just always appealed to me. And to be honest, my highest end sources probably are my turntables. So I must think that vinyl is the superior format, right? No. So, vinyl, let's get into it. Well, I guess I should start out with the tedious thing of establishing some credibility here. My own personal turntables, I have two of them. My main rig is a Michell Gyro SE, and on that I have an Origin Live Silver Mark II tone arm and a Benz-Micro wood body cartridge. It's a nice setup, maybe not a $50,000 setup, but very competent, certainly high end, and I've had that for years and years and years, and it's just a fantastic setup. My other turntable is kind of a Frankenstein deck. It's made up of old Acoustic Research and Merrill parts, and they are all installed in a DIY plinth that the previous owner had made. And on that, I have Audioquest PT6 tone arm, kind of a sleeper tone arm. I've always liked that one. I think everybody's forgotten about them, but they're quite competent tone arms. And mounted on that, I have a Shure cartridge, kind of a classic cartridge. They're not the end all, and I could certainly do a little bit better on that deck, but my gosh, those old Shures track so well. Everybody kind of loves them, and I can see why. So I would call both turntables certainly high-end quality. So all that to say, I know what good sounds like. And in addition to that, I've also in the past owned an AR turntable. That's the model. If you know, you know. It's actually called the AR turntable. That was kind of my first turntable that was better than sort of a plastic low-end player, and that was the thing that really got me into realizing that, boy, you could really get some cool sound out of vinyl with a little bit better than a low-end setup. I had a Lynn Basic tone arm on there, and that was the turntable that I first bought a Shure cartridge for, and eventually it morphed into that Frankenstein deck. I actually sold the AR turntable and ended up later just stumbling across another deck with some AR parts. That's kind of my own turntable history. But in addition to that, oh my gosh, I've heard so many different decks over the years. I can't even remember all of the makes and models that I've heard, but everything from the ubiquitous Technics SL1200s through Regas, music halls, Project, a number of VPIs from the old classic HW series up through TNTs, Nottinghams. I just can't even remember all the different decks that I've heard. Sodas. I actually have a soft spot for the Soda turntables, and just so many more. Wilson Benesch, Clear Audio, more than I could even recount. But all that to say, I have a pretty good baseline of what good and bad sounds like in turntables, and my own are pretty competent and pretty dialed in, and I get good sound out of them, and I've had them for years, and I really know them. So, with all that being said, vinyl, let's talk about it, right? Let's look at the elephant in the room on this one. Vinyl is a pain, right? It's a pain to listen to vinyl. So why on earth do some of us still love it so much? Because if you think about it, oh my gosh, you have to go to the trouble of sourcing and buying vinyls, and sometimes you get them cheaply, sometimes they're expensive. There's huge variance in the pressings. I own vinyls that I have 3 different pressings of, and they really vary in quality. And then you've got to keep them clean. And then you have to, keep them somewhere on a shelf or whatever. And then, once you've established your collection, just to play them, my gosh, you have to flip through your collection. You have to pull it out of your collection. You have to pull out a sleeve, and then you have to pull the record out of another sleeve. Then you have to get it on the platter. Then maybe you've got a clamping system to fix on. And then you've got to dust off the vinyl. If you're particularly fastidious, or if the vinyl is just really dirty, you might give it a wet wash. Personally, I have a VPI 16.5 for things like that. Then once you've got it all out of the sleeve and on the platter and dusted off, it's time to cue the tone arm, and then there's a cueing lever that you have to drop, and then you're making that mad dash in 2 seconds back to your listening chair, hopefully not missing the first couple of seconds of your song, and then ka-chunk, scratch, scratch, scratch. There's that noise in the lead-in groove, and finally you're playing your vinyl, and then, there's going to be pops and ticks always, no matter how good your pressing is, no matter how good your turntable setup is, no matter how dialed in, no matter how clean everything is. It's almost unavoidable. Now, good pressings and good setups can mitigate that, but always you're going to have surface noise. You're going to have the pops and clicks. You're going to have high distortion and limited dynamic range, because those are the reality of the format. So why do we put up with all of that? Well, I would argue that all of those steps that I mentioned probably are part of the reason why people still love it. When you're going through all of the steps involved in playing that record, pulling it out of the sleeve, going through the process of obtaining the vinyl in the first place, and dusting and cueing and all of that, each one of those steps, I think, psychologically prepares you for an event. Playing vinyl is an event. It's almost performative in what we have to go through to play them, right? And I think each of those steps gives you skin in the game. So by the time you've done all that, you want to sit down and enjoy the fruits of your labor. You want to sit and have a listening session and give that program material your undivided attention. It just makes you want to sit down and listen. So I think that's probably the big drive, because objectively, vinyls don't sound that good. I mean, on paper and even in practice, objectively, they just don't sound that great. The limited dynamic range compared to the latest and best digital, the surface noise, just everything about them, the frequency response is uneven, even in the best of situations. They're just objectively not great by modern standards. And if we're being honest, it isn't just playing the vinyl, but dealing with setting up the turntables and obtaining the turntables. Because, of course, you can't just buy a new turntable, pull it out of the box, and expect it to be perfect. You need to have a good platform to put it on, preferably a wall shelf, or failing that, just something really, really sturdy and massive. You have to set vertical tracking angle and vertical tracking force. You have to set anti-skate. You have to go through a stylus and cartridge alignment procedure. You have to keep the stylus clean, just like you do with the vinyls. There's so much involved with making it all work. But there again, I think for a lot of us, it becomes a labor of love. All of those things make us want to keep coming back to it and to really give it our attention when it's just time to sit down and enjoy listening to a side of vinyl. All of those things really keep us coming back. Now, sonically, I mean, because it seems like I'm really trashing vinyl a lot, and objectively, all of these things are true, and all of us who play vinyl, especially those of us who are in the audiophile sphere, and have good equipment. We all know that we've all been through all of those things with the setup and keeping things clean and keeping things aligned. And no matter how hard you try, always there's going to be objectively some issues inherent in the playback. So I've been kind of hard on vinyl, but why do we still love it? Aside from those reasons, I think mechanically, there's something to be said about the relationship of mechanically transducing some grooves in a piece of plastic through a stylus, through a cartridge, and having that electronic transduction. Something about that, I think there's something in phase relationships and in crosstalk that, in my experience, does something kind of special to the sound stage. On a really good setup, you get this sort of openness and life to the sound stage that I don't feel like I have really gotten even from good digital. And I think that cartridges, and this is dependent on the cartridge, of course, but just the frequency response that you tend to get from vinyl can impart colorations that we find pleasing. Maybe there's a little bump in the lower mids that gives things some weight and some punch and some meat to the sound. I think there's also something to be said about all of that distortion that I was just speaking about kind of objectively, pejoratively. On paper, the distortion isn't great, but in practice, there does exist distortion that we find pleasing to the ear. Second-order harmonics are pleasing to the ear. If we didn't like them, nobody would listen to tube amps. Nobody would listen to rock music with the distorted guitars and the layers of compression and all of this. For me personally, I actually quite enjoy listening to vinyl through tube amps, and I kind of think in terms of the convenience and the sonic realities of it, if you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound, right? Because with tube amps, my God, first I'm switching on my preamp and I'm waiting for those tubes to warm in, and then I'm switching on my power amp and I'm waiting for those tubes to warm up, and then really it's 15 to 30 minutes before you can really enjoy your tube amps because they need to warm up. If you have a good tube setup, then you'll know that the sound changes over the first number of minutes that you've switched them on. Once it comes up to operating temperature, things start to stabilize and sort out a little bit with tube amps. And but boy, the sort of sonic characteristics of them, and especially with vinyl going into it, is weirdly satisfying, right? So some of us really enjoy that type of playback, even though on paper it's objectively suboptimal. So I think those are a lot of reasons why we like vinyl, even though the truth about vinyl is it's objectively outdated and really not that great. Now, in all of the time that vinyl has enjoyed a resurgence over the last couple of decades, and let's not kid ourselves, I think those of us who never gave up on vinyl and have consistently been playing them even through the cassette and CD era and then into the streaming era, those of us who have consistently played vinyl have looked on, I think, with some amusement as a new generation has discovered vinyl and has really enjoyed vinyl over the last couple of decades, even to the point that, record pressing plants have had to reopen and they have waiting lists to get your pressings out and all of this. The business has really been booming again over the last 10, 15 years. It really came roaring back. The funny thing about it is, in the last couple of decades that vinyl has come roaring back, digital has gotten better and better and better. 22 years ago, when I first bought my first really good turntable, which was the Gyro SE, it was a little bit easier to go around saying, oh, vinyl is still king, vinyl sounds best, because the digital back then still wasn't quite what it was now. Mostly people were playing digital from CDs, which meant that you still had a disc that was read optically. You had to put a disc in a transport. There were mechanical issues with that. And then really the quality of the digital was 16-bit 44.1 kilohertz, which is, not bad, but it's certainly not what we have today in terms of the best digital. So back then, I think it was a little bit easier to say, things don't sound as good as they cracked up to be with digital. One of the promises with CDs was that they would last forever, but then people figured out that you can scratch up that disc pretty easily and have skips just like scratches in vinyl. And, early digital was definitely, unless you had really, really good digital to analog conversion, it could sound cold. It could sound kind of hard. Something about the soundstage was kind of flatter and more dead sounding, and it wasn't as engaging. Whereas today, with the digital we have today, it's not just 16 44.1 off CDs. Now we've got we've progressed even from optical discs, Blu-rays and SACDs and things. There is 24-bit 48 kilohertz and 96 kilohertz. And now we have hard drive-based digital, which eliminates some of the problems I think that we had with optical disc reading. Now we've got digital that comes straight off hard disks, whether that's through the internet or maybe you've digitized your own collection to hard disk. That's eliminated some problems. We now have available to the regular consumer 24-bit 48, 96, 192 kilohertz digital formats, and things have gotten so much better. We've even progressed from the good old-fashioned WAV files through other types of file formats. We now have direct stream digital. The average consumer now has access to the best, mastering grade digital. So in all the time records came back, digital just kept getting better and better and better and better. And despite that, vinyls came back. I mean, they came back at the same time. It's just so weird if you think about it. So I really think it goes back to all of those things that I brought up about vinyl, the performative element of playing a vinyl and of having your hands on a hard copy. For some of us, I think that really prepares us emotionally and psychologically to sit down and give it our undivided attention. When you go through all of those steps to make analog playback happen, you've got skin in the game, right? You want to enjoy the fruits of your labor that much more. And I think it prepares us to really sit down and have a listening session and really listen to the program material critically and just enjoy that experience. Playing vinyl is an event. It's an experience. And I think it's something else too. Fun. It's fun to sit down and take one of these pieces of plastic and stick them on a platter and kind of marvel at, okay, I'm putting a diamond into a bobsled of little plastic grooves, and those are turning into sound. I think it gives us a connection to all of audio history as well. We can listen to them and go, gee, look at how far we've come over the last 100+ years of recorded audio, and still we're enjoying this. There are some things about digital that just can't deliver that kind of experience still. I think that really the allure of digital still is the convenience of it all. And I will say, to be totally honest, I listen to digital more than I listen to analog. For me, though, digital is really about convenience. I'm streaming music in my car. I will stream music in my garage while I'm, fixing the lawnmower or whatever it is I'm doing. I will play digital while I'm cooking in the kitchen. Maybe I'll listen to a CD or stream off a streaming service or this kind of thing. It's really good for, wallpaper sound, as they call it, kind of background noise, very convenient. There's really no point in going to the trouble of playing vinyl when you just need to be kept company with some music in the background, right? But, for me, when it's time to sit down and actually have a listening session, a proper high-end audiophile grade listening session, I almost always go back to vinyl because I want that event. I want to go through all those steps and sit down and just enjoy a different style of playback. The mindset that all of those steps and all of that trouble of analog puts you in is emotionally and psychologically relevant and fun. And for some of us, I think it's still really important to have that in our lives and in our music listening lives. For a lot of music lovers, I think that's really what keeps us coming back to vinyl. And that, I think, is the truth about vinyl. Is it objectively good? No. Is it the superior format technically? No. Is it still a heck of a lot of fun? Yeah, for a lot of us it is. So I'd like to hear what you think about it. Do you still think vinyl is king subjectively or objectively? Or are you watching this going, no. These vinyl nuts are all crazy. Maybe you went back to digital years ago, decades ago. I shouldn't say back to. Maybe you went to digital years ago and you never came back to analog, and you're watching this going, what is this guy on about that it's all fun? That all sounds like a pain. I love listening to high quality digital. If that's how you feel, I'd love to hear from you too. Drop a comment below. Do you also agree or disagree with me that probably the things that make vinyl a pain are also what a lot of people enjoy about it? I'd love to hear what you have to say about that. And if you enjoyed this video, I'd sure appreciate if you would like and subscribe. It goes a long way in helping me understand if putting a camera in front of my face and talking about these things is worth it or not. And if you have any ideas for other topics you'd like me to talk about, please do put them in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.